Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the latest COVID-19 protocol briefing. We are gonna probably go for 15 minutes or so. Myself and Norm here from Volleyball Island, just chatting through the match day protocols. This webinar, this video is really designed for the match day COVID officer, club secretaries, referees, or anyone really that's involved in a match day, just to kind of get a bit of background on the match day protocols, what's involved, and the various processes, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, we will crack on with that. Bear with me 1 second. I get this organised. Okay. So look, the agenda for the update really is we're going to provide a bit of an introduction really on the various levels of the Living with COVID plan that the government published a couple of weeks ago. We'll chat through the core principles really that we've come up with that underpin the protocols. Norma will then take over as our COVID officer and chat through the match day protocols and also the match day checklist that each match day COVID officer will complete and submit after the game. And then finally, we will go through kind of the process really in terms of adhering to protocols on the day of a match. So what we've done is we put together kind of a brief infograph overview, which has the levels across the top. We've put in level 4 and 5 together because once we hit that stage, level 4 and 5 actually is no different for volleyball. So you've got the 4 various gradings of levels across the top, and then down the left-hand column you'll see kind of the type of activity or the type of team. Read along that, and then it gives you what can be done at each level. So the country now, as of October the 7th, is at level 3 nationwide. Basically, this means that only adult National League teams can train and can play indoors. Okay, pods of up to 15 can train outdoors recreationally, beach volleyball, but indoor training is only for National League teams. That's because the government's Experts for Sport group have put in a series of exemptions, and one of those is for national governing bodies senior club championship. So our most senior club championship is our National League, therefore that has an exemption under level 3. So players, referees, coaches can travel to different counties for training and for league matches only. So this infograph is on the website, volleyballisland.com, so you can check that out and download it and share it with friends and families, colleagues, etc. So that's where we are. The country at level 3, National League only indoors, pods of 15 outdoors. So I would say we're going to chat through the various protocols, but to begin with, really just going to provide a couple of core principles that underpin them. So the first one really is these protocols are all about reducing risk, making the league games, making matches and training as safe as possible. Okay, so what we've done is we've put in certain measures that help us reduce risk. So there's some kind of match scenarios where you're going to share the same ball, you're going to collide with other players. That is unavoidable match-related incidents, okay, where it's very difficult to reduce risk of a COVID transmission. What we're trying to do is reduce risk everywhere else outside of that. So that's why, for example, we're prohibiting the likes of high fives between points, prohibiting handshakes, huddles between points. We're advising that pre-match team photographs are done in a socially distant manner. Okay, so little things really to reduce the risk at all times, and that's really the key point that we want to emphasize throughout this. Where there is an opportunity to reduce the risk of a COVID transmission, we should try and take it. Okay. Second key principle is that these protocols, they're a live document. They've been updated, I don't know, probably on the 12th version since May, and they're going to be updated regularly. Each Wednesday, the Volleyball Island COVID Committee will meet. will review the previous weekend's games, any issues that were arising, and may then update the protocols based on that. Okay, so the protocols will be updated regularly. They have a position on the Volleyball Ireland website, which we'll share the link to later on, and we advise that you keep an eye on that as much as possible for the updated versions. And the next principle really is that we're here to support and to help, and we really want to re-emphasize that these protocols and the checklists that we're going to discuss aren't here to try and point fingers or to catch teams and clubs out. It's in place so we can help, so we can identify where potential issues are, and we can come up with solutions to help us all deliver volleyball in the most safe way possible. Because we really believe that it's a team effort. Home and away teams, referees, coaches, players have to work together on a match day to deliver volleyball in the most safe way possible. And the fifth key principle really is communication. We think communication is absolutely key. So that's the COVID officers engaging beforehand, it's the club secretaries chatting, it's the referees and the COVID officers working together on a match day to ensure that any potential issues arising can be solved. Okay. So that's where we are, bit of an introduction, some of the key principles. I'm now going to hand over to Norma, our COVID officer, who's put in some fantastic work, a lot of work preparing the various protocols. She's going to chat through the match day specific parts. Norma, over to you.
Thank you, Gary. I'm just going to share the match day protocols and talk through them. So I'm going to take you through the match day protocols, and these have been put together and finalised after kind of thorough engagement with COVID officers and clubs at the AGM. So the purpose of these match day protocols is to take clubs and the COVID officers through what should happen on match days. So we know already from the 12 different versions we've had of the protocols that there are a lot already in place. Clubs have put the work in. So there's a lot of stuff already in place, such as you're already sanitizing equipment for your training. You have appointed COVID officers. So there's nothing additional in the match day protocols apart from the checklist and maybe one or two other kind of observations that need to be just pointed out. So it's really important to note as well that the general principles outlined throughout this document work in tangent with the match day protocols. So they work coherently side by side, match day protocols, the principles and the general protocols in this document. So 13.1, so both competing teams must appoint a COVID officer that will be in attendance at all times during the match, including from the time players and officials arrive at the venue and depart. The names and contact information of the appointed match day COVID officer should be communicated between club secretaries at least 48 hours before the start of the scheduled match. And the COVID officer should also introduce themselves to the match referees at the earliest opportunity. At least 24 hours before the scheduled match, the home team COVID officer should make contact with the appointed away team officer. And the home team COVID officer is responsible for communicating to the visiting team and the match day officials any relevant information, such as the venue guidelines and access requirements. The away team COVID officer then is responsible to relay this information to the rest of their team as appropriate. I just want to touch on the roles and responsibilities really quick of the COVID officers. There is a document that is available on the website that goes through the roles and responsibilities, at training, at matches. So I just want to touch on the responsibilities on a match day. So the COVID officer should ensure all match protocols are being adhered to. And they should engage and communicate, as mentioned, with the opposing team's match day COVID officer. And they're also required to complete and submit the match day protocol checklist that we'll talk about a little later on. And back to 13.3 then. So the away team's delegation can have a maximum of 22 people made up of players, subs, coaches, parents and guardians. unless both teams agree to a different lower figure. The away team COVID officer must inform the home team COVID officer of the total expected number of people in the away team delegation for any preparation that's required. Both COVID officers must provide assurance that all members of their match day delegation have completed the up-to-date and eligible fit to play survey forms. A match day protocol checklist has been developed to help and support the home and away team COVID officers to carry out their duties, and this must be fully completed by both COVID officers. The home and away team COVID officer must sign their checklist and can enter any comments in relation to the implementation of the protocols. The checklist must then be sent to Volleyball Ireland. Alternatively, there will be an online form available for the officers to complete, and a unique link will be available for each club. Both teams are required to make an attendance list to assist with contact tracing should it be required. The home team attendance list should include all people within their delegation, as well as the referee, officials, home team spectators, and parents and guardians. The visiting team attendance list should include all people within the away team delegation, including away team spectators and parents and guardians. The host team should ensure adequate signage is displayed regarding any social distancing, sanitizing of hands, and wearing face coverings. Equipment used for the match, such as the net and post, should be sanitized before and after the match and in between sets, if there are multiple fixtures. Match balls are required to be sanitized before and after the match and in between sets also. All warm-up balls must be cleaned and sanitized before usage on match day. If the home team choose to provide seating for both teams, the following options can be used. First option is to provide seating that can be adequately sanitized before and after use and in between sets. Second option is to allocate seating that can be moved upon the change of sides between sets and it will be sanitized before and after the match. To avoid any crossover, teams will rotate in anti-clockwise between sets, including the coaches and the subs. Group team talks, such as timeouts, should be conducted observing the social distancing guidance. Where possible, substitutes should be socially distanced or wear face covering on the subs bench. High fives and other celebrations are not permissible. Spectators are at the discretion of the home team and managed by the home team. The indoor maximum capacity should be observed at all times. Access to change room facilities, depending on the venue, guidelines and restrictions. Travelling teams should be informed of the availability or the unavailability of changing facilities and come prepared as required. Scorekeepers are limited to 2 people and advised to wear face coverings, and scorekeepers should sit 2 meters apart where possible. Coaches, team managers are asked to leave their team list on the scores table for the scorekeepers to fill in the score sheet. The sharing of ID cards is not permitted. And there's a feature on Go membership that allows secretaries to print all the ID cards on whatever 1 or 2 sheets of paper, whatever is required. So that will help with that one. As mentioned, pre-existing protocols are still applicable and are to be implemented concurrently with the match day protocols by both teams. Volleyball Ireland will be carrying out random spot checks during the National League season to ensure that the protocols are being adhered to. In the interest of contact tracing purposes, home secretaries will be notified in advance. In the instance that participants, officials or spectators feel that the correct protocols are not being adhered to, a 3-step process to resolve the COVID issues will be applied. Gary is going to talk us through these a little later on. Failure by the home and away team to comply with the COVID matchday protocols may result in match cancellations and forfeits, and fines may also be issued.
Norma, just on that, thanks for taking us through each point. Just I suppose to reiterate, at the start we did share the infograph overview. Just to suppose reiterate that at level 3, spectators aren't permitted. All matches are behind closed doors. The only exemption from that would be if a parent or guardian is there from a safeguarding capacity, but spectators aren't permitted at level 3. Also, as well, as Norma mentioned, the downloadable team list. If you go on the Volleyball Ireland YouTube channel, Mark in the office has kindly put together a bit of a step-by-step guide there for secretaries that can, so it's pretty easy to download the team list, so it makes the sharing of the ID cards, well, it rules out really. So if you go on the YouTube channel, you'll see a pretty simple, straightforward step-by-step guide.
Thanks, Gary. So we mentioned a few times about this match day checklist. So I'm going to just briefly talk through it. So what we took you through in the match day protocols is reflected in this checklist. And the checklist, the idea behind it, it's a guide and it's a checklist to ensure that the match day aspects are that they are covered in it. So as you can see, there's some general information required, such as the home team, the venue, the date and the time, and so on, okay? So there are two versions of this. This is the home team version. There's also an away team version. And this just encourages like the home team, for example, to ask themselves, did we sanitize the equipment? And then you say yes or no, you tick it on the sheet. Did we inform the opposition of where the emergency isolation room is? Yes or no. So it serves as kind of a prompt and reminding you to ask these questions and to implement them. And then on the flip side of that, it's for the away team COVID officer then to say, do we know if the equipment was sanitized? Yes or no. Are we aware of where the isolation room is? Yes or no. And I suppose depending on that, it opens the lines of communication to have a conversation with the COVID officer to ask these questions so you can tick yes. And it's also to ensure that everybody is satisfied that the measures and the efforts of the COVID officers are in place just before the match begins. So an important part of the checklist is that there's a section where the COVID officers can provide some feedback and comments. And the reason for this is because we want to hear what worked, what didn't work, were there any areas that clubs struggled with? And then for us, we might see a trend as well, you know, a trend across the board where clubs are saying, you know, I'm not sure about this area. So then it's up to us to provide more information, more guidance on that. So with this feedback, it helps us understand what support that we can provide. And as Gary mentioned, we want to help. We're not here to trip anyone up or to blame anyone or point fingers. We want to keep volleyball going and keep everybody playing. So when we all work together, with that feedback from the clubs, lets us know what's going on, and then we can act on that as well. So that's the paper format. Just very briefly, I want to show you the online version, and the links for these will be sent out to the club secretaries in the next day or so. So you'll receive again a home version and an away version of the hard copy that I just showed you. Again, it's just the same questions. They're just put online for your convenience if you wish to use this instead. So it's the same questions. And again, at the end, you have the opportunity to provide feedback. When submitting these, if you're using the hard copy, submit it along with the score sheet. If you're using this online version, you can just submit it within about 3 days after the match has been completed, so we know. Also, you can take a picture of your hard copy and a clear picture so we can see it, and you can email it to me then. I think just to really reiterate and to recommend that everyone to familiarize yourselves with the protocols and with the checklist. So on the day, you're not looking at the sheet for the first time, that you know you're prepared and you can make a plan as to this is how we're going to go in and start the match. So it can all be, you know, it can be smooth, it can be flowing, it can be safe, and then we can, you know, get to the volleyball then as well. So I'm going to hand you over to Gary, who will talk through the 3-step process for if there are any issues on the day, how the COVID officers can go about resolving them.
That's great, Noah. Thank you for that very comprehensive overview of the various protocols. Yep. So I'm going to just chat through basically, I suppose, what happens if there are issues at a match day, and basically in conjunction with the Competitions Commission and the Education and Training Commission, we've kind of come up with a pretty straightforward 3-step approach. Okay. Basically, the first step one, is that any issues that are arising should be highlighted to the home COVID officer, who will attempt to deal with the problem. Away team players refer any issues to the away team COVID officer. The away team COVID officer will then have a conversation with the home team COVID officer, and the ideal solution is that they come up with a solution to solve the problem. Okay. It could be anything, I suppose, from a lack of signage, perhaps, could be an example, or perhaps a ball was accidentally forgot to be sanitized between sets, things like that. Refer to the checklist. Any issues, the first step is that the home and away COVID officers have a conversation, work together, come up with a solution to put in place to solve the problem. Step two really builds on that. If the problem can't be solved, it escalates to step two. So they discuss the issue further and implement the solution to deal with the problem. So it's a little bit more kind of in depth, really. If we're still struggling after step two to solve the problem, we then escalate to the third step, which is that both COVID officers will consult with the first referee. Okay. Again, working together to try and implement a solution to deal with the problem. The first referee, of course, working with their teammate, the second referee as well. If the issue isn't resolved after the third step, then the referee has the power to suspend the match. The investigation process after that then is aligned with the standard reporting process for any safety-related issue that would normally arise that may result in a match being cancellation. So being cancelled. So basically, it's in line with the existing competition rules related to health and safety. If we get to that stage, then we would expect that a detailed explanation of the issue would be included in the home and away COVID officer checklist report. So the section there that Norma chatted about at the end, where you put in the comments, when we would be looking very much that the information will be provided in that section. And then I suppose, look, the bottom paragraph there, just reiterating that fact that it is important, it's imperative that these matchday protocols are adhered to where possible, as much as possible, and obviously, we're here to support and to help with any issues that do arise as well. But I just wanted to highlight that there's a 3-step plan in place there, and that's how that process will work. Okay. Norman, do you have anything to kind of add on that section?
I think the communication piece is really, really important, and even a few days before the match, for the COVID officers to touch base, and I suppose to even plan with each other as to how the day, or how the match is going to kind of run, if you like, and then on the day to work with each other, and on the adhering to the protocols, to try and find solutions so we can continue to play volleyball in a manner that doesn't pose risk to anybody. We all, like that, we're a big community, we're a family, we want to keep each other safe, and we want to keep volleyball going as long as possible.
Absolutely. And look, just referring back to the principles that we chatted about at the start, it's a team effort, it's a supportive environment, communication is key, and really the best way through this is if we get okay. Then finally, just to wrap up, just the link there at the top of the screen to the webpage with a variety of resources. Please use them as much as you want. The full protocol document is on there. Where Norma chatted before about the match day section, that's within the full document, the full protocols. So please make yourselves aware of those, become familiar with them, and they'll be very, very useful and helpful when we get to match day. Other resources on there, so we have the infographic, which we shared at the start. We'll also be publishing a really short, simple guide, 1-pager for players, which can be shared amongst your teams, so they'll be best prepared and know what to expect on a match day. Various other templates there as well. And we have a range of downloadable posters and booklets provided by the HSE, which you can again share amongst your clubs. So look, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope it's been useful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We'll do our very best to answer them for you. And also as well, just to finish off by wishing you the very best of luck as the new season begins this weekend. Good luck. Cheers.